In 1972, Matt Christopher wrote his most famous of his 140 books, The Kid Who Only Hit Homers. It was not only his best-selling title, but it also was his personal favorite and his dream to turn it into a film one day. Through the efforts of his sons, Dale and Dwayne, and producer Wayne Chesler, that dream finally happened in 2020. Oh, and that's me, Alex Montero. I played Sylvester Codman, the kid who only hit homers. During the production, I would ask Dale and Dwayne, where did it all begin? Why did the ghost of Babe Ruth come back and teach Sylvester how to hit homers? Well, it was a secret till now, and my mom asked me to finally share it.
Your eyes and your vision are under attack. Damaging blue light from the sun, your phone, your computer, your tablet, even light bulbs and car headlights is constantly bombarding you. The good news is our eyes actually already have a line of defense to counter the effects of blue light. This defense is made up of 3 pigments called carotenoids. MacuHealth with MicroMycel, the only supplement with the exclusive patent on all 3 macular carotenoids and MicroMycel technology.
Do your patients know what presbyopia is?
There are people who are afraid of the press.
Have you talked to your patients about multifocal contact lenses?
I've heard the bifocal, but not multifocal.
Exactly, not multifocal.
Do you need help with your multifocal strategy? Learn more at the conclusion of this episode. With more screen usage and indoor time, myopia, also known as nearsightedness, is increasing and getting worse in children. Now, certified eye doctors can prescribe MySight One Day, the first and only FDA-approved soft contact lens to slow myopia progression in age-appropriate children. Visit CooperVision.com to find a Brilliant Futures certified eye doctor near you. Today we have a special guest, Dale Christopher, the son of perhaps the most famous sports author for young readers, Matt Christopher. Matt Christopher wrote more than 150 books across 4 generations. His most famous book was The Kid Who Only Hit Homers. Today's guest, Dale Christopher, and his brother Dwayne are continuing the legacy and have launched a Kickstarter campaign to fund the prequel to The Kid Who Only Hit Homers, The Kid Who Will Never Hit a Homer. Matt Christopher's books have always pointed a kid's head in the right direction. Please support their initiative to continue wholesome, entertaining reading for our kids by going to Kickstarter today. You can find the link in the description of this episode. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Gary. It's good to be here.
So let me ask you, Dale, the kid who never hit home runs. When you were a kid, did you hit home runs?
Once in a while. It was a rare occurrence if I did hit a home run, but I managed to hit a few.
That's good to hear. So tell us about your dad. Why did your dad write about sports?
Why Dad wrote about sports is because he loved sports. I mean, sports was his life growing up with all his brothers and sisters. And he just, it was just part of his everyday being. And, having younger brothers to play and, you know, being a part of his life, it was just natural for Dad to just stay with the sports. And of course, baseball was his most favorite sport.
And who was his favorite team and who did he follow?
Dad was a New York Yankee fan for sure. And, you know, the, he, of course, he liked Babe Ruth at the time, never met the gentleman, but it was in his era. And I have to admit that Dad really, shined when, the Yankees were on. And even though, I wasn't necessarily a Yankee fan, I still went right along with Dad when it comes to watching the Yankees.
So did you guys grow up in New York? Where are you guys from and where do you live now?
We grew up in upstate New York. It's actually in the Finger Lakes region of New York, and just outside of Ithaca. And Ithaca, a little town called Lansing, and that's where I grew up. And and my older brothers and my older sister, my younger brother, we were all born in the Ithaca area. Right now, I'm living in Saratoga Springs, New York, which is still in New York, but it's just a little bit farther east. So I get back to Ithaca once in a while, and it's good to get home to see different people and the location.
So what age did your dad start writing?
Did you say that again, Carrie?
At what age did he start writing books?
Uh, he started writing books. Um, I would say probably when he was in his 20s. I think the thing is that Dad started writing. Okay, not just books but short stories when he was in high school, and writing was something that he just loved to do. And before the books came into play, it was short stories. And you look at the late 30s and the early 40s, in which what was out there were magazines, comic books, and Dad would put together short stories, and sometimes those short stories would be the insert to a comic book. In other words, when you'd open it up to the very middle, it'd be 2 pages, and Dad's story would be there. So it started off with short stories, and they weren't necessarily sports either. Dad wrote a lot about mysteries. He loved mysteries. He loved science fiction, and he just whatever came to his mind, he would write about, and those were the beginnings of his short stories. And the books came a little bit later.
So was he a trained writer? Did he get any kind of formal training in writing, or is something he just was self-taught?
Um, I think for the most part, Dad was self-taught. I think he did at one time take a writing course. I'm not exactly sure where he did that. It might have been up at Cornell or someplace, since we lived in Ithaca. But for the most part, Dad, he read magazines about writing, and there is still a lot of magazines out there for writers on how to write or what to write. And Dad was he would get these periodicals all the time, and he would frequent them and he would read them, and that would help his writing.
I mean, so did he listen to the Yankee announcers back then? Was it Mel Allen or Phil Rizzuto? Listen to the announcers?
I'm sure he did. Phil Rizzuto and Mel Allen, those voices just ring in everyone's ears if they remember the Yankees from back then. Yeah, I'm sure he did, and like I said, he loved to listen to the games on the radio, and we didn't watch them on the TVs at all at that point, but we certainly were listening to them on the radio, and then very rarely would we make a trip to New York City and see a game, but it did happen once in a while.
So tell me about the kid who only hit homers. I want to be that kid. I play softball still. I would still want to hit homers.
Well, the kid who only hit homers fit right into Dad's kind of like a fantasy. Okay, he loved fantasy. He loved to write about things that were just out of the ordinary, and this book really puts that together. The little character, the little boy, Sylvester Codmeyer, and again, I really don't know where Dad came up with that name, but Sylvester Codmeyer the third, no less, was the character in the book, and he he just loved baseball, but was not a good baseball player at all. And as a result of that, he he tried hard to make the team, and failed, but with little persistence, he was able to get on the team, but he still couldn't hit. He just could not hit. And in Dad's book, okay, a very, very important character shows up. And that character is called Babe Ruth. His name is Babe Ruth. And he kind of, comes into the scene and kind of helps Sylvester.
We were talking about the kid only hit homers. And so what happened was we have a kid who was striking out, couldn't make the team. And then all of a sudden, Babe Ruth shows up. And take it from there and tell us a little bit about the movie also while you talk about this.
Well, the unique thing about Dad's book and the movie is that Sylvester, the main character, the little boy who couldn't hit a home run, is the only one who can see Babe Ruth. And he talks to him, and his classmates see him talking, and there's no one there. And I kind of think he's kind of a little bit wacko, a little bit, but at the time, Sylvester just didn't realize that no one else saw him except him. And but Babe Ruth helps him, shows him how to stand, shows him how to grab the bat, shows him how to, swing at it, making sure his eyes are on the ball all the way in, and keeping that bat level and hitting it. And after a few minutes, after a few tries, Sylvester starts hitting the ball. He starts hitting home runs. He starts hitting the ball right out of the park. So Sylvester, and he eventually gets back on the team and pleads with the coach and saying that you got to let me back on. I think and so he does, and everybody still remembers Sylvester as a player that just couldn't hit. So they were kind of, ridiculing him. But when he got up and that first pitch came to him and he hit it over the fence, everybody's face just went, they couldn't believe it. They could not believe it. And so he then goes on, and he really, obviously, he helps the team because every time he got up, he hit a home run. And they went on to, winning their league and doing well all around. But the thing that happened, though, was that in the book, and Dad wrote that Sylvester got a little cocky. Okay, he was a big star now, and everybody was, looking out for him. He was on their local radio stations, and it kind of went to his head. And in his conversations with Babe Ruth, Babe Ruth kind of pointed this out to him, that this isn't the way it's supposed to be, Sylvester. You should take your success and don't flaunt it. And there was a message in there that Dad gave to his readers in that segment, in that whole part where he, just, hey, I'm the greatest ball player ever now, and that just doesn't work. It doesn't work in baseball, and it doesn't work in life as well. And so he went on, and well, you're going to have to read it or see the movie in order to find out really what all happens in the end. So,
and they could get it on Amazon if they want it, buy the book. And how could they see the movie?
Well, the movie right now is the other day. It's on a streaming app called BYU TV. Believe it or not, Brigham Young University has it on, and it's free. So if you just create an account which I've done, and just call it up, just search it, it will show up, and it's and this one is free. Like I said, I haven't gone to BYU TV in a while, but the last time I did, it was there. So that's one place you can see it. I know it was on Amazon Prime for a while, and on different locations it was still on. And also, I believe it was on a family channel, and this might be coming out of Canada, which I'm not sure. But so it's out there at different locations.
It's The Kid Who Only Hit Homers. Now I want to know about The Kid Who Will Never Hit a Homer, the book that you're releasing and should be released by the time this this radio show is being played. So tell me about that. The Kid Who Will Never Hit a Homer.
Well, The Kid Who Never Hit a Homer is, like you said, like we all said, it's the prequel. And, we are actively now, getting people involved with trying to get this flowing and get it going. But the book, and eventually the movie it takes place, it starts off in Cooperstown, New York, which we all know is the Baseball Hall of Fame. And what a perfect place to have this little boy begin his career, so to speak. And Sylvester, it's a contest that everyone enters to get an opportunity to do a sleepover. Okay, a sleepover in the Hall of Fame, which sounds kind of cool, really, in which they would bring all their mattresses or whatever and hang out in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So it kind of starts that way, and it begins his interest even more than he already had in the baseball world, because like I said, he wasn't a very good ball player, but he loved it. He loved the game, and he just wanted to do his best as he could. And this was kind of an opportunity for him to really see what was out there, see the different people in the Hall of Fame, and get him more excited, I think, than he has been in the past. So again, it's going to be a great film and a great book. So we need your enthusiasm and help in order for us to happen. Thank you.
So is there any character that comes to help, like Babe Ruth in that story?
That's interesting. I'm going to have to review it a little bit to see whether or not that Babe does show up. But you remember that there's a lot of old ball players at the museum, and any one of them could have helped him out at any one time. So
I can see we don't want to give too much away, but I can see
no, we don't.
all the ghosts of all the ball players coming to life while the kids are sleeping in the Hall of Fame, and maybe playing a game while the kids are there. So that sounds really, really, really interesting. So of the books that your dad wrote, which was your personal favorite?
My personal favorite was The Kid. Dad, even The Kid Who Won't Hit Homers, Dad, he wrote that book and he dedicated it to me. And I kind of took that to heart, even though I couldn't hit a lot of home runs. But that was my favorite. It definitely is my favorite book.
And was your dad much of an athlete?
Dad was, very much so. It was something in the Christopher family that, Dad and his younger brothers, they played baseball. And Pop, that's my grandfather, he encouraged it. And Dad was a good ball player. He, matter of fact, in the late 30s, he was playing out of high school, and got noticed by a baseball scout, and the scout was from, believe it or not, the New York Yankees. And he ended up playing in the Canadian American League in 1938, 37 era, someplace in there. And the name of the Canadian team was the Smith Falls Beavers. It was a Yankee farm team. Back then, I'm not sure if it was labeled A, B, C, and D, but it was one of the smaller, uh, franchises, and but it still was a Yankee farm team. So Dad got an opportunity to play for them. He played third base, and he was a good hitter, and that was one of the things that got him the notification. And he went up to Smith Falls, and he played for the Beavers for not very long. Okay, about 3 or 4 months. And even though Dad had some good days, um, he had trouble with the hitting. And I can remember Dad saying that he just, it was a bigger league, it was a bigger competition, and even though he was a good hitter, he was running into some good pitching, and they let him go after about 3 or 4 months. So Dad was, of course, disappointed, um, but that didn't stop him from playing the game that he loved.
So Dale, we're written up into the break. Did he play with anybody that was famous? Yeah, you can hold that thought for a minute, because we have to go to the break. This is Dr. Kerry Gell, Wellness 1280 Radio on Open Your Eyes Radio, speaking with Dale Christopher about his dad, prolific book writer. We'll be right back.
MacuHealth, your science-born and tested solutions for visual performance, macular degeneration, and dry eye syndrome. New products coming soon. Embrace the science.
We're back with Dale Christopher, who's talking about his dad, Matt Christopher, who's wrote close to 200 children's books, mostly on sports. And, it's fascinating to learn about a writer. So is that how your dad made a living? Through writing, or was he something first and then he became more of a writer where he was able to make a living writing books?
Well, in the beginning, Dad, he had a lot of different jobs. Okay, writing was a hobby for the most part, and he would write, his short stories and then eventually his books after work. And we lived at different places. We lived in Syracuse, New York, and Dad worked at the General Electric Company there. And when we lived in Ithaca, he worked Smith Corona typewriters in Groton, New York, nearby. And so Dad had to, supplement the income by working, because a short story didn't really make a lot of money. If he got a check for $100, that was awesome. And I could recall Dad opening up envelopes and seeing a check there for $100 or $200, and he would just beam, because they took his story, they printed it, and he was just thrilled that this was happening. But even though that one or two checks came in, tenfold, hundredfold were the ones that did not come in. And they were, rejections after rejections after rejections. But Dad didn't give up. He would take those rejections and fix it up, resubmit it, and hopefully that it would be well enough, good enough in order for them to print it. So he just continued. He just never gave up on his writing. And after a while, when he started writing the books, okay, his very first book, like you mentioned earlier, The Lucky Baseball Bat, 1954. And throughout that time frame, the 50s to the 60s, his publisher, Little Brown and Company, out of Boston, but now they are in New York City, they realized that they had something with Dad, and they were asking him to come up with books, 2 or 3 a year. And so he was really pumping them out, so to speak, not just baseball, but basketball, football. And I can recall when I was in high school, and Dad and Mom sat down at the kitchen table, which they did often, and Dad made a decision that he was going to write full time. And I can remember Mom crying. She was kind of nervous, saying that there would not be a paycheck coming in every week or every other week, or however Dad got paid. And he would be just writing books. And as an author, he got paid twice a year. So it was really a stretch. And but Dad was convinced, and he convinced Mom. Mom would pretty much do anything that Dad wanted her to do overall. And he started writing full time. And he was successful. It turned out to be the right decision. And like I said, I was in high school, and I really, I knew my dad was an author. I really didn't at that time realize that he was famous. He was getting to be famous. And once I graduated from high school and on to college, uh, Dad would contact me a lot about his new books, a new story, and he would run it by me, and I really appreciated it. Then it was during that whole time frame that I realized that I've got a father that is so prolific and so famous. It was just incredible. But like I said, though, he worked different jobs. He could do a lot of things. He was a very talented man, and so once he stopped these odd jobs, I shouldn't say odd jobs, but stopped his working, he just wrote full time, and that was all day long and all night long. And I can remember him in that a typewriter now, um, just typing away, and tap 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 was right in my head all the time.
What kind of
And
what kind of research did he do for his books?
well, depending on the sport, he made sure that he knew. For instance, we lived in Ithaca, and Dad was asked by Little Brown to write a hockey book, ice hockey. And at that time, Dad never played hockey. He was a baseball, football, basketball guy, soccer a little bit. And I can remember the only time the Pee Wee hockey players in the Ithaca area got ice time up at Lionel Rink up in Cornell was like Sunday mornings at 5 o'clock. I mean, so Dad, he would get up and he would go to Ithaca up to Cornell University, and he would sit down with the coaches and watch the Pee Wee players play hockey early in the morning. And he learned, okay, he learned about the game, and he was, you know, once he got to the point where, hey, I understand the game, I can now put it in a story. And so that was the type of thing that he did. He made sure that he knew about the rules and knew about what the different the different aspects of the game, and which he put into his book. So it was quite a process. It really was. I mean,
You
I
think
remember once him asking me to go up to to Cornell with him. I said, okay, I'll do it one time, but that was too early for me in the morning.
Well, the break before I asked if your dad played with any famous baseball players. Do you know if he did or not?
Well, yes. Matter of fact, after he left the Beavers, Ithaca, New York had a pretty well-known Ithaca baseball league. Now they didn't get paid at all, but it was pretty competitive. And one year he was, along with other ball players, uh, was asked to play an exhibition game, and they were going to play against the New York Giants. And if you remember that, the New York Giants was the name of the team of the New York area, and he would he was going to face Mel Ott, okay, Johnny Whitted, Bill Terry, uh, Bob Seeds. These are names that were, maybe not necessarily well known, but Dad was going to end up playing against them, and he was just thrilled, especially Mel Ott. I think that name is most notable in this case, but he was thrilled. He really was thrilled to play against them. And it was an exhibition game, but still, it was a game.
Did they wind up playing?
Excuse me?
Did they wind up playing the game?
Oh, yes, they did. Oh, yes. Yep. It was a fundraiser, if I remember correctly, to the former Giants manager. His name was John McGraw. And the game was used to provide funds for him and his legacy. So.
And did your dad get a hit in the game?
I'm not sure if Dad did or not, but I'm going to say yes. I mean, he had to. He was just that good. So, but I'm not sure at all, Doctor.
So you're interested. Well, your dad wrote about extreme sports, and how did he get interested in writing about extreme sports? I have a son who's very interested in extreme sports, and as a parent, it makes you crazy. He does, rock climbing, and he's an extreme skier, and and it's funny because my son, his name is Justin, when he was a little kid, I couldn't, when he was like 8, I couldn't get him to go on the roller coaster on the Jersey Shore. He was scared, but something flipped as he got older, and now he's an adrenaline junkie. How did you get interested in that?
Well, the extreme sports, looking back in the timing, I mean, they came in later. Okay. Mom and Dad uh, lived in Florida for a short time. And while they lived in Florida, Dad's publisher asked him to look into some extreme sports, skateboarding, dirt bike racing, um, and while Dad was in Florida, um, he researched those types of games and types of sports, and again he learned about them, and ended up making and putting together some stories that surrounded that type of a sport. But Dad wasn't a skateboarder. He never really did any of that himself, but he certainly learned.
Growing up in upstate New York, were you guys skiers?
No, nope. Skiing was not a part of our repertoire, so to speak. Yeah, it was just something that we never did. It was probably a financial decision, really. So.
So your father passed away in 1997. How old was he?
Dad was 80 years old.
He was 80 years old. Okay.
Yeah, he was 80.
And when did he write to? Up until what age?
Dad was writing. I mean, he was still writing stories well into his 70s, and he would write a lot of what we call a synopsis. Okay. And these synopses were perhaps maybe 100 words or so. And it was during the 70s that, when he was in the 70s, that his typewriter was no longer useful. He ended up getting a computer. And that was a tough decision, by the way. It really, he really fought hard not to use the computer. But anyway, he ended up getting a computer, and he ended up putting a lot of these synopses, which is just basically an outline of a story, um, on his computer. And matter of fact, after he passed, uh, my brother and I, Dwayne, we went to his computer, and we found a lot of these synopses. I have a feeling that Dad saved them somewhere and totally forgot where he saved them. And so the two of us ended up, taking the synopsis, printing them out, and sending them to Little Brown and asking them whether or not the synopsis could be turned into another Matt Christopher story, which they did. So it was kind of interesting that that Dad, he wrote right up to the end, and it was it was just something that he this is what he did. And like I said, he always confided with us, confided with me, and about stories, asked my opinion, and and it was fun to be involved. Even though I was in college or out of college, he still made an effort in order to run things by me, which I totally loved.
And I understand there's a flag football story in the future. Tell us a little bit about that.
Ooh, well, that is something that's coming up. Okay, obviously it's on the, it's in the arena now. It's something that kids are playing and adults are playing, and it sounds like it not sounds like, but it's something that, hey, maybe we will put together a story, and with a little less contact, so to speak, and we'll see how it works out.
So all his stories had morals. If you could talk about some of the morals of the different stories, what he wanted to teach children.
Well, Dad had a very humble life, and his life was family, and there were so many things that Dad shared with his readers about his life. I mean, his honesty, his integrity, his just to do things right. It was that important to him in order to relay that type of a message across in all his books. And even though it was different sports, the there was always that message in there of some sort of a of some sort of a life giving thing. We like to go to church. We went to church. We ate supper together. These family values that we grew up with, Dad always put them in his books, hoping that kids read them and saw that, hey, this was the thing to do. And it's tough these days with single parent families, I know. But Dad wanted to make sure that when he wrote these books, that he mentioned these things. That this is what is really it's all about. All the family values and the morals that he shared with everybody. And it's so important today. All those books, they have a message to everyone, even today. that someone could pick up a book of Dad's that he wrote back in the 60s, and there's something in that book that a kid, a girl, a boy is certainly going to understand and and be a part of.
Let's say kids between 6 and 9. What book would you recommend for them, whether if it's a boy or a girl? Which book would you recommend for that age?
Oh, that's a tough question. A 6-year-old, okay, you're looking at first, second grader. Dad did write for a younger age group, and he put together a series of books. Again, here is Dad in his fantasy world. He had a character that was a dog that could talk to his master. And so Dad put together these picture type books. They were chapter books, but the dog that stole the pitch, the dog, I'm trying to think of some other ones that Dad wrote, but it had the dog in it, and it would talk to its master. And so it was kind of interesting, but like I said, it was for a younger group, and it had a lot of illustrations. Okay, not compared to the say a 6th grade or 7th grade story, which might have 1 or 2 illustrations. It's sad that a lot of the books nowadays don't have illustrations. It's really it's kind of sad, but that series of books is still out there today, and they're popular with, like I said, first, second graders, and it's something that I always found fun to read. And it was
for teenagers. What books would you recommend for teenagers of his
well, you're looking at a teenager now it might be just a little bit older than what some of Dad's books are for. And I think that I can't think of any book in particular, but I know that going to schools, which I did quite frequently a while ago, going to schools and talking about Dad's books, that 6th and 7th graders were still picking up what we call the classics. The classic was the type of book, The Kid Who Only Had Homers, and The Great Quarterback Switch, and so on and so forth. Those were classics, and teenagers, they found them easy to read. Okay, if they had to read a book.
Finishing up now, tell me, you got about a minute left, the Kickstarter campaign, and how can our audience help you bring your father's legacy to life and movies to life? What can we do? What can my audience do to help you guys?
Well, first off, you can, obviously, the Kickstarter is something that we are thrilled about doing, and it is going to really help overall the continuation of Dad's legacy with a new book, and then, of course, we hope a new movie. And I think that Dad's readers now can be a part of that, and we encourage their participation immensely, because it's going to be fun. It's going to be great to have another round of Matt Christopher books coming out.
We're up against the end. This is Dr. Kerry Gelb.
Okay,
Thank
all right.
Christopher for joining me. Go to mattchristopher.com to help out if you can. This is Dr. Kerry Gelb. See you next week.
Your eyes and your vision are under attack. Damaging blue light from the sun, your phone, your computer, your tablet, even light bulbs and car headlights is constantly bombarding you. The good news is our eyes actually already have a line of defense to counter the effects of blue light. This defense is made up of 3 pigments called carotenoids. MacuHealth with MicroMycel, the only supplement with the exclusive patent on all 3 macular carotenoids and MicroMycel technology.
Fitting multifocal contact lenses presents a big opportunity to meet patient needs while growing your practice. Alcon is your partner not only with our innovative portfolio, but through e-learning. Learn to enhance your multifocal strategy today with the Alcon Experience Academy.
OIE Broadcasting is the emerging leader in social media. We use scientific entertainment to drive more patients into your office. Visit oiebroadcasting.com and sign up today.